I think Viracocha would be the perfect setting to read from my first novel, Some Things That Meant the World to Me, because the whole book is set about half block that away. This chapter is called The Man of the Hour. I'd like to brag about the night I saved a hooker's life. I'd like to tell you how quiet everything else in the world was while I helped her. This was in San Francisco, late 2007. I'd been drinking in my favorite dive bar, Damascus, which was painted entirely black, floor, walls, and ceiling. Being surrounded by all that blackness had this slowing effect on time, like a shunned astronaut meandering in space. It was a Wednesday night, seemed like any other, but that was the way my life worked. Things appearing one way, and then getting poisoned. I was unemployed again, but the bartender at Damascus used to work at a restaurant where I was a line cook, so he let me drink for free. I sidled in about 10 at night and sat down next to a guy in a bowler hat who offered to buy me a warm beer. I accepted, and the first thing he said was, "I'm wearing a diaper." Then he smiled, and all of his teeth looked like frozen ginger ale. His name was Vern. People had tried to introduce me to him before, but those times he'd been in blackouts, yelling things about like, "That's no way to talk to your commanding officer." He drank warm beers because the cold ones made his ancient teeth ache. His brand of choice was Michelob, and the bartenders at Damascus always kept a warm stash for Vern. Why are you wearing a diaper?" "You gotta be ready for anything," Vern said. He paid for our warm ones and then added, "It's just like war, man." He took his bowler hat off and set it on the bar. Vern must have been 70. He was bald. The hair he didn't have on top of his head he made up for with his eyebrows. Fierce tangles of curly hair, long and rolled like handlebar mustaches. The bartender set the beers down and walked away to help somebody else. "Do you got a fucking problem with my diaper, boy?" You know, just last week I'd seen him spit warm beer in a man's face because the guy was wearing a Dead Kennedy shirt. "I know that's a band," Vern had said to him, "but those Dead Kennedy brothers might have saved our country. Now we live in a hive of shit." That was when he spit on him. The guy was probably 40 years younger than Vern, but he didn't do anything about it, didn't even answer, wiped the beer out of his eyes and walked away. He, like the rest of us, assumed if Vern was nuts enough to act that way, then he must know some cagey ways to bring men down. Vern waited for me to respond, and when he realized I wasn't going to say anything, he said, "That's a good little boy." Then he spanked himself. Then he said, "The older the buck, the harder the horns, motherfucker." We drank. His eyes glazed over, his mouth hung open. I said, "Are you okay?" Vern twirled the long, matted hairs of one of his eyebrows, didn't answer for a few seconds. "I'm okay now. Look," he said, and pointed at his diaper. Not one leak. I didn't want to sit with him or his temper anymore. I thanked him for the warm one and went outside to smoke. Only 2 drags into my cigarette and I heard some muffled, gagging noises coming from down the block, maybe 20 feet away. I could see 2 people, could hear a man's voice saying things, but I couldn't make out the words. "Is everything okay?" I asked. More choking noises. A woman said, "Please." I said, "You okay?" A man said, "No worry for you." Then he whispered something to the woman that I couldn't hear. She stopped begging. I looked up and down the street, took a few steps toward the couple, tossed my cigarette down, and heard the harsh sound of weight being thrown against a corrugated garage door. The man's silhouette slamming the woman into the clamoring metal 2 times, 3 times, 4. He pulled his hand back and slapped her, and she fell to the sidewalk, and the man, Still standing, his legs splayed to straddle her face, leaned over and choked her again. He picked her head up and shook it, hit it on the concrete. I yelled, "Stop!" I ran at him. He kept choking. I kept running and he kept choking, and I was there. I was with them. I was with her. And this was when the world forfeited its volume. The three of us engulfed in a gaping quiet. We were there, we were breathing, we were tussling. We manufactured our normal human noises, but I couldn't hear any of them because I was helping her. I punched him in the cheek, and he fell down, springing back up and running away. "Are you okay?" I asked, and she blinked her eyes slower than I'd ever seen anyone blink. So slow, like she'd just woken from a coma after decades of devastating sleep. I told her to go to Damascus and have them call the cops. And then I bolted after him, having no idea what I'd do if I caught up, and even with a pack-a-day habit, I ran fast. Olympic fast. Soon I gained on him, feeling my adrenaline, the venom that lets mothers lift cars off their children's legs, rollicking in me. I could feel it hurtle through my veins, demanding revenge, demanding that this man pay for what he'd done. He was only a step ahead of me, so I jumped on him, wrapped my arms around his waist, pulling him down, both of us crashing into the sidewalk in a flailing heap. I grabbed his hair, cocked my arm back, but before I brought my fist to his mouth, he hit me hard. He was a southpaw, and what must have been a wedding ring cut into my nose. It had some kind of gem jetting up from the band because something sharp, like a nail, punctured my skin. My nose leaking blood, I brought my hands up to cover my face. He hit me again. I dropped to the ground. He kicked me in the ribs and the face 6 times. He left me there. Thank you very much for your time.